So, welcome to this episode of Being Well and Having an Edge with Martin Franson that runs Welledge in the Old Town. And with me, I have one of my mentors and teachers and dear friends, Amy Burke, also a chiropractor. And she's my teacher in something called biogeometric integration, BGI for short, which is a chiropractic application. And we're going to delve into this during the next coming hour approximately. So you're going to learn more about it and why would you choose it as a human being for your health and possibilities. And not least, we're going to talk about that experience that it can change your life, about yourself and the choices you make in your life by being touched in a different way, looked at in a different way. And not only that, but also some of the intellectual part of the BGI, which is, for those that are brainy, can be very interesting as well, because it's totally different worldview, how we interpret and look at the body, and everything can show up different through that. So with that introduction, let's get going. So Amy, chiropractic, we both chiropractors, and when people listen to this and think about chiropractic, they have their little worldview about it. And I know why I'm a chiropractor. It goes back to that original thing that D.D. Palmer, the founder of chiropractic, said: unify man's spirit with man physical. And that might seem really weird and strange in some ways, but to me it's just about aliveness. How alive can I be? How much of that, whatever that is, can become live within me and in my life. Yes. And the change that I can have in life and the impact I can have on other people's lives in this world. Why are you a chiropractor, and what moved you then into BGI, and how that hooks it all up to the potential of BGI for people?
I became a chiropractor mostly because I wanted to serve people through touch. I was a massage therapist, and I knew I was gifted, and I knew how much I loved connecting with people through touch. And when I got to chiropractic college, I was surprised, just because of my own ignorance of how most chiropractors work, of how focused it was on the spinal column.
Yeah.
And I kept thinking, but what? I know what we store out here, and here, and here, because I touch it in my work. And I understand and I get the importance of the nervous system, and there's all this other stuff too. And if we are truly connected from top to bottom, then how can we keep coming back to this box? And so that for me felt like, okay, then obviously I'm just gonna take what I'm getting here and then morph it into some way that makes sense to me. So even through chiropractic college, I was probably not following the rules of imagining what my practice would be like. And there were a lot of incongruencies for me. I mean, when we talk about the promise of chiropractic as being the sole purpose of chiropractic being to connect man the physical with man the spiritual. And then in my experience, the vast majority of experiences that I had on a chiropractic table felt pretty mechanistic and pretty unspectacular. So my shoulder feels better, my hip, I feel a little looser. But it wasn't like I would get off the table and just be like, whoosh.
Wow.
And so I had a bunch of things that I just was like, well, we'll have to deal with that afterwards. And that felt okay too. I understand in the context of an educational setting, you have limits and boundaries and obligations and duties, and there's all kinds of bureaucracy that end up, unfortunately, shaping what can be the limits of what can be taught. And obviously the emphasis is get you to a point where you can pass your exam so that you can become a licensed whatever it is. So I got that, and I was just sort of at peace with it. And then I met Sue, and basically she said, not only does the promise of chiropractic exist through what our founder Dee Dee Palmer said, but here's a way to create that in your practice.
Yeah.
And it was very interesting to me. And then I felt her hands.
Yeah.
And I had that just sense of total connection with myself, and just feeling these layers of accumulation, of tension, of story, of myth, of lies, of perception, of judgment, just kind of melt off and shed, sometimes in very small, almost imperceptible ways, and sometimes just in these kind of huge, tumultuous in some ways, moments of just opening and freeing.
Emotional releases.
Sometimes emotional, but sometimes just really physical, like just feeling like that snake when it's shedding its skin, and just that moment of like, okay, now this one is done.
Yeah.
And it felt like there was so much possibility in that realm of here's what is an option, not only for the person on the table, but for the person who's doing the work, and for the community that is created through that.
Yeah.
And the people who are attracted to a model where you are recognized as pure potential, and the road is to get over and through and remove that which is creating any barrier to you and your expression of perfection.
Yeah.
Versus, I think you've got some inflammation in your elbow.
Yeah.
So your tennis game probably isn't at the top. And there's nothing wrong with that.
No.
Like if I were a tennis superstar, I would want two people on my team. I would want an elbow, knee, shoulder specialist.
Yeah.
But then I would really want somebody who sees me as just infinite potential.
Yeah.
And how can we facilitate the expression of more of that? And so when I met Sue, it just like all of a sudden it clicked that not only was the concept of chiropractic being one tool in helping people access their connection to spirit, but it was also a hands-on application that I could facilitate that promise in my practice.
Yeah. Because a lot of people that come in for chiropractic, chiropractors said they seek for pain. There's something that's not working in their life. They cannot lift the children or whatever. And that's why we make many choices. There's a pain,
Absolutely.
There's a limitation going on, and that's fine. And that's something that BGI, as any chiropractic application, can assist with and facilitate
Absolutely.
that transformation. But it's that viewpoint of how we look at it, and there's not only BGI, there's other applications within chiropractic field that look
Of course.
as stored potential. How can this be used as a fuel for whatever you want to achieve in life? How can I actually allow it just by being there? It's actually something that can be used.
Yes.
I'll talk about it as when you find a lot of stuff in the fall. Now we're here down in Italy, and there's still left more of it here, the fall and leaves. How the leaves can be actually used as fuel for what's coming in the spring.
Yes.
So it's
Well, everything has a purpose.
exactly,
And if we
nothing is
believe
broken.
in that concept of universal intelligence, or there's a reason for everything, or however you couch it, but if you believe in that concept, we can't say, except for this shoulder thing is really out of whack. That shoulder thing is leading you to a different set of choices.
Yeah.
Whether it's to incorporate chiropractic care or start offloading some of the things that you're no longer able to do. But pain and discomfort and dis-ease are all incredibly valuable tools for us to be able to evaluate our choices.
Exactly.
And how we want to engage with our daily life and in a bigger picture and what matters to us.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that some people in the wellness profession tend to discount pain as a motivator, because if you're sitting in your
bliss,
it's like, do I want to help people with low back pain, or do I want to help people reach the next level of their spiritual embodiment?
Yeah.
One sounds more interesting from here, but when you're the person with the back pain, I don't really care about the spiritual embodiment. Help me.
Get me out of this.
But also help, see me.
Yeah.
See how wounded or affected I am and how unable I am to embody my maximum potential, because I can't even get out of bed.
Yeah.
And now what? And who am I if I can't be and do in the world the way I'm expected to? And so it brings up a lot of really critical life lessons that are not to be, in my opinion, discounted, because there's so much at our core, particularly in the structure we have in our world today of just such a profound emphasis on doing and being in the process of, and what's on your list and what can you cross off, and sometimes it's truly about being in the discomfort where that push forward emerges.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I think how we approach that, I know that many people come to me that really much appreciate that. I'm telling them that there's nothing wrong with what is. It's perfect. It's now how can we use this as a possibility for leading you, to take you, facilitate you where you want to be in life. It's nothing is broken. There's just a potential for improvement here. What else is possible for you? Yeah. And I'm a chiropractor. I got into chiropractic because I was a chiropractic patient. I mean, I had bad back. From making too much martial arts, believing that I was invincible, training 3, 4, 5 times a day, and I got really bad backache. And the only thing that got me out of that was chiropractic. And then the philosophy of chiropractic was so congruent with the philosophy of Aikido that I was doing mainly, and that was just like, all right, this path is for me. And now obviously, I had earlier this year, I had back pain again, and then that was like really humbling to get that. All right,
even me.
Yeah, even me again, and to be taken care of. But I make my choices. Obviously, when I'm in that situation, I get my chiropractic care, and I tell my practice members that as well. But I also make the every week choice, because I want to get the system going. And being here down this weekend is obviously a learning experience, but it's also that. What's next? What else? And to experience more of that ease and awe that is possible with this application. So it's the whole span, and I think many chiropractic applications they can provide you within a more limited range of human experiences. And for me, BGI offers from pain, dis-ease, unease, all the way to those experiences that are the most savored human experience that we really desire for more people to have. It can provide through all that span, if one chooses it. I mean, it's a choice, but it's on the plate, it's on the menu. It's not like a menu that is only for back pain or headaches or tinnitus that I have a lot of patients with. It's also, do you want to stay and experience some things that you might not have experienced before? That's there on the plate as well. Your menu, your choice. So let's get back a bit to to that, because we spoke yesterday, we're down here outside Venice where you live, why people come back, we as chiropractors come back to take seminars, and the big reason is not only the learning experience, which is awesome with you, but it's also to get adjusted and checked ourselves by getting checked and getting my own system clear, I can be a better practitioner, I can be more of myself. And that I think is something for anyone that comes in, they can be more of who they are here for to be. Can you speak a bit of that within your own life and some of the people that you've seen, can be other fellow chiropractors that have been on the route as well. What's the transformation that you've seen in your own life and some other people?
Through chiropractic care?
Yeah.
Okay. So, yes, like I have some stories that I even just thinking about them, I start to smile, but also it's so touching because when all of the facade drops away, it's like, how do I want to apply the time that I have here on earth every day? So I had, when I was practicing in New York, I had a couple come in, and I'll just take a little bit of time because it was just such an extraordinary arc of witnessing. It was truly like watching the caterpillar turn into a butterfly. And in the middle, it was also very uncomfortable. It was not necessarily just all roses and unicorn glitter. But anyway, she was brought in by a friend of hers who had been seeing a chiropractor who applies the principles of BGI in Michigan. And she came back to New York. She knew that I was there through her chiropractor and set up an appointment with me and said, I'd like to bring my friend who I grew up with in New York. Do you have room for both of us? And I said, absolutely, you can come in at this time. So they came in, and I have a pretty straightforward intake form, but at that time I think it was a little bit longer, just for me to get more of an idea of what was going on in people's lives. And at that time I had less time to be able to spend chatting with them, so the more that they could write in advance, the better we could use our time together. So the woman who had already seen the chiropractor was very chatty on her form and told me everything. And the one who had never seen a chiropractor basically does not apply, skips over big sections. And at the time, well, actually I still do. It's one of my favorite teaching tools and learning tools in my office. And I'm just looking in here if there's anything I can use. And I think that I can. So I don't know if it's worth it, but if we were to take, and then also the little green one, just above, Okay, so this is not exact, but the way I perceive chiropractic, my work, life, is generally when people come into my office for the first time, they're in a state of either protection or compression. And so if you imagine the density of this structure, and there's not so much flexibility in this because it's solid. And that solidity is the layers of tension that we accumulate over time due to traumas or inputs or toxins or thoughts that are non-productive, that are just kind of squeezing us, and in some ways we think that they think that they are protecting us. Don't try, you're not good enough, don't bother. So it's another layer of, okay, I'm not even gonna try, that's fine, because then I don't fail. Or, you fall and you hurt yourself, or you get a phone call with devastating news, and it's just layer after layer after layer of protection. And so we become very dense, hard structure. And if you watch people walking down the street, there's certain people that walk through with physical ease, and it has nothing to do with their training capacity. but everything to do with their ease at life. So I have in my office something called a Hoberman sphere, which starts about like this as a ball, and then it expands like this. And it's just an amazing tool, because when it's hard and contracted, it's still very interesting and intriguing, because it's got all these different colors and it's kind of spiky, but it doesn't have a lot of flexibility. And so then let's have you take that. So that's the people at the beginning.
And for those who are listening, this is what we call this, a hard...
Yeah, it's like a cylindrical porcelain, dark green, round structure.
Yeah.
And then I will open the Hoberman sphere. So for our purposes now, I would say something like, that's you when you come in, and this is you.
That's the seed.
Yeah. And this is you as you start to expand and start to express and start to flourish. And there's all of this new growth, and there's all of these new possibilities. And that's what I do. Do you want to get on the table? And most people don't need more of an explanation.
Do you want to go from the seed you be to the potentiality of flourishing? Yeah.
And so it's like, it's real clear what my vision is. It's about growth. It's about expansion. So this woman comes in, and she was very, very protected. I mean, she was just so dense in her structure, but also her energetic being. It was just super rigid and tight and dense. And so I use a very light touch most of the time in my practice, because I feel like when we're working in that density, if I go in and start trying to push things around, it just goes further into protection. And I explain that to people. I don't want to increase your body feeling like it needs to be protected. I want to create a space for the opening. So if you leave from my office saying you did nothing, I'm okay with that. Because oftentimes it's that nothing, 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 and then all of a sudden, whoosh. And trust, let's just trust the process. And I think things have changed, because there's so many people practicing different types of body work that are lighter and less invasive or less thrusty, that people are like, and people understand that if you go to an acupuncture appointment, it's not like you're going to have this necessarily huge perception of change. And then all of a sudden it's like, wow, how I feel in my body is different. So anyway, she was so shut down that I actually said to her after I kind of touched her, and I just felt how much protection was there. I didn't know if at that moment, with her friend there, with me, who she had never met, and it wasn't an experience that she had chosen for herself. It was an experience that she had kind of been channeled into by somebody who very lovingly wanted to offer her a different possibility, but it wasn't her choice. So I said, you don't have to do this if you don't want to. It doesn't matter to me. I really want to serve you if I can, but if it doesn't feel right to you, that's totally fine with me. And if you would prefer to come back at a different time, that's okay too. No, it's okay. Which part is okay? You can go. I can go where? You can touch me. Okay. Okay. So, I mean, what I was able to do, what her system was allowing, was so minimal. I mean, really, it was like have her take a couple of deep breaths. There was a really deep disconnect in through her pelvis that if you just imagine, like, we are energetically connected from top to bottom. We are structurally connected from top to bottom, whether it's through the fascia, whether it's through our circulatory system. We are connected on different levels. And through her pelvis, there was just this very intense disconnect. So if you imagine her legs all the way up to her pelvis were one color, and then from her pelvis up to the top of her head, there was a completely different color. And so in our work, before we do any kind of input, we want to make sure that the tone going through the system is consistent. So and what we call that is a disconnect. And when we address it, we call it establishing continuity. Yeah. So I established continuity, and I truly don't think I did more than that. No. I just didn't want to overwhelm her personally, and I didn't want to overwhelm her system, because imagine going from something completely disconnected to putting that back together. That's a lot. Yeah. So she made it pretty clear that I had not done anything. And, there's those moments of like, I know I didn't really do anything, and that's okay. And I did do a lot, but it feels like nothing. And so it's just sort of head game. Yeah. And even the most competent and confident practitioners have those moments of like, am I doing anything? Like, what is actually going on here? And so she left. And the next day, I got a phone call saying, I need you to call me. Yeah. So I called her, and hi, this is Amy. And she said, I know who it is. What did you do to me? And, just that moment of like,
exactly.
What did I do to you? What did I do to you? And I said, tell me more. And she said, I got my period. And I said, okay, is that something
good thing
that surprised you? And she said, I haven't gotten a period in 7 years. And I said, and I was like, on my end, yes, yes, yes. Because she was young, and there was no reason why, but there was a reason why. The reason why is that there was so much disconnection. And the second we just approximated her two pieces, her body went, oh yes, I know how to do this. And then literally the day after, she started to bleed, and she hadn't had a period in 7 years. So, it's that moment of like, okay, either this is going to be a long-term relationship or we're never going to talk again. Because when you have something so intense at the beginning, you just kind of don't know how it's going to play out. So how it played out is that she started coming in very frequently, and also brought her husband. And she was working as a copy editor. Her passion at the time was writing and photography, but she made her living doing unfulfilling work. Yeah. And her husband was a cyber security person, consultant. And by the time I left New York, which was maybe 5 or 6 years after we met, they had both quit their jobs, and she had started to study a meditational technique and then started to teach it. And he had begun teaching yoga. Yeah. And I don't want to misspeak. They probably won't hear this. Maybe they will. Maybe I'll send it to them. I don't want to misspeak, but I don't think that she had ever done any type of meditation. I don't think he had ever done any type of yoga. And all of this is not to say that yoga is a more valuable tool than cybersecurity. No. But for them, how they were living their life before and how they are living their life now was a completely different experience and expression. Yeah. And they, just from the very beginning, they basically said, we have no idea what you're doing. We have no idea what's going on. I've never felt more strongly that I needed to be somewhere. Yeah. And it was a beautiful connection for all of us. And I often will tell people in the beginning with the expanding ball is I understand that you're here because your shoulder hurts or your low back is bothering you or whatever that is, or because of your ulcerative colitis or your rheumatoid arthritis. And I hear you, and I just want you to know that through that, my vision of what's possible transcends your physical manifestation or lack of pain.
Yeah.
And it's not to discount it, it's just, I understand that it's there. And for me, what is so exciting is the other stuff. Yeah. And then it's also exciting when you're in less pain. I am so happy about that because I know what it means to be in pain, and I know what it means to have to work through that in order to just smile and connect with somebody because you're so in your own ick. Yeah. And so to be able to move past that and then engage with the world in a gentler way for you, it to me is a huge privilege.
Yeah, an honor, and it's deeply humbling.
Yes, absolutely.
It's deeply humbling. Yeah, thank you for that story. So, a lot of people that come in to me and get into care, they recommend other people come in, but they do not know how to explain it because it's this light touch. Generally, there's not that original thing that you think about chiropractic, that there's a crack in the back, which it can be, but it's more common that we use very gentle touch applications. And not only along the spine, as you said in the beginning, it can be anywhere on the body. It can be the hands, it can be in the front of the body, it can be on the head. The whole body gives access to addressing the whole system and make it more wholesome and more capable of expressing its potential. So let's get into that a bit for those that are interested to know, what is this? What's the understanding, the model? Because chiropractic, as you said also earlier, there's an understanding that the nervous system is what controls everything in the body, which is true as well. That's not that we're not putting that on the side. The nervous system is the most complex system to distribute information and organize information so that the system can self-organize itself and self-express itself, and the life-supporting process of the cells can work as a symphony, and how we can support that. But within the concept of BGI, we also bring in connective tissue, the fascia system, and the research about fascia system as a mediator also of communication. So you have electrical communication, you have transducinal forces through the fascia system, you have vascular flows that go through the fascia system. So let's get to that. Although prior to getting into that nerdy things, we come back to how the light touch part of it, which we address well. Just if you don't want to know anything about the understanding of, there's actually a physiological, neurological explanation model that we use to explain why we touch the way we touch and why things are happening and unfolding in the body and in the emotions and in the mental process and in the way you move and express yourself in life. If you don't want to know all the physiology, which we'll be getting into, and the geometry of it, just let's get to the touch part for those that, you know, and we start moving from there into explaining why a light touch can achieve what it can achieve.
Okay, well, I don't know if this is going to answer your question directly, but I think it's going to make sense to people who are coming from a chiropractic background. We can store information in almost any type of tissue. Yes. And so I feel like my job as the chiropractor is to figure out where the potential is being stored. Yeah. And so I like to use analogies and examples.
That's good.
And have you, Martin, ever received a present from somebody where you look at it and you're like, and kind of look at, make sure it has your name on it, because surely this was not meant for you.
Yeah.
I mean, we've all had that experience, and in your mind you go, okay, I'll find somebody else to give it to, re-gift. So back to the concept of the sole purpose of chiropractic is to reunite man the physical with man the spiritual. Like, to me, that is such a profound statement.
Yeah.
And then I've walked out of so many chiropractic adjustments going, meh. Okay. And I think one of the reasons why is because if the stored potential is being held in the fascia, and the only type of force application that is being used by, let's say, chiropractor in this case, is through the osseous system or the bony system, then it's like giving a gift with great potential, but then kind of missing the mark. Like you've given it to the wrong person. So it's not that the gift isn't good. The adjustment is always good. But if it's not going to the right area or system or layer of stored potential, when we deliver the adjustment, it just isn't quite as great as a gift as it could be. So I feel like my role is to assess where the greatest potential is and then to meet the system that way. Now, I like to explain the fascia like just a huge, incredibly intricate spider web through the body. And if I am to experience something that my body isn't able to fully integrate at the time that it happens, that information is then stored in that web. Now, I can go all the way through the web to the bony structure and put a force that will go through the bony structure. But it's like on the outside, there's all of this incredible webbing network that if I'm moving so fast, so much, that I can overcome the inertia of that skeletal structure, I've missed the opportunity to see what is being stored and housed and held in that spidery network. And to me, that is the fascia. And so the light touch is a way of working through the fascia, which connects absolutely everything in the body, including the bone, including the muscle. It covers the muscle, it covers the muscle fibrils, it covers every organ, it is inside it is a protective wrap everywhere in our body. And there is no area of the body that is devoid of fascia. So that attracts me very much, is that it is everywhere present, and understanding how things are connected from top to bottom, it feels to me like an excellent and brilliant way of accessing the whole system. The other thing that I love is that when somebody is in a state of compression and is having a protective, whether it's a protective posture because of pain or because of emotional trauma or because of years and years and years of self-doubt or self-loathing or whatever, to go in there and zip right through all those levels of protection, sometimes the body will feel like it was not listened to, and then it goes to protect itself even further. So I always just tell people that I don't want that at all. That is the opposite of what I want. So we are going to go slow, and we're going to move through the soft touch, and we're going to allow the system to open from the inside out. And even though it may feel too slow, potentially at times, understand that there is a process, and that we will actually, in my opinion, get to a place of ease for you on whatever layer, whether it's emotional, physical, spiritual, chemical, faster. Because I'm not fighting with the system. It's just this opening and unfolding and gentle unwinding. And I think I used to really emphasize it a lot more than I do now, because so many people just come in, and I used to really feel like I had to say, well, this is why I'm doing it this way. And now people go, well, that's what I want. Like, I don't want aggressive assistance. I really like to be met where I am. And right now, I feel vulnerable and I feel delicate, and that's why I'm here. Yeah. So it's a different approach. And again, there's nothing wrong in any way with a dynamic force application. No. And when it is appropriate for the system, the angels sing. It's like, woo, yes. Yeah. And when it's not, it can either be kind of a ho-hum, or it can be like, oh, we missed that opportunity for just that hug of connection. And when I see a lot of babies, in my career, I've seen a lot of babies. Right now, I don't have a lot of babies in my practice, but they go through waves, and it also depends on where I am physically. And there's no doubt when you go to connect with a baby that you're going to use this incredibly gentle, loving touch. Yeah. Now, why would I do that any differently on an adult? Yeah. We're the same structure. Yeah. We're the same being longing for connection and to be held and to be seen. And, most people respond much, it's easier for them to let their guard down when they feel gently held rather than pushed. Yeah.
Exactly. And especially the places where we touch is where the body is the most inviting to be touched, to release that specific pattern of stored potential. And that's, the beauty of BGI analysis is to find the indicators of what is the priority here. What's all analysis is about that, finding indicators, finding what's the priority. But BGI gives, to me, a very wholesome way to look at the system as a wholeness, just not finding that particular vertebra or that particular area or that particular trigger point. It's how it's all interconnected, and where is the system inviting, and how to hold it and how long to hold it for the system itself to start self-regulating itself. Yeah. And it's a different viewpoint on that concept of subluxation, which is a term within chiropractic, which is normally people think of it as, it's something that's stuck, it's not moving, which is one part of it, and the other part is that there's dysautonomia, where there's the dysregulation of how the nervous system is handling the process of the body. And then you have this ponesis, which is the part of that, how is energy, are energy used the most efficient, or is it not used as it should? Is there a lot of stored energy? And that's what we have to release, but it's the system itself that learns, which is the beauty with BGI. The system learns to how, again, integrate this stored potential energy, whether it's stored in the bone tissues, whether it's stored in the muscular tissues or the connective tissue. Yes. Where is it? So it's a different view on the subluxation we can touch based on when we get into the geometry and how it's stored there, and also the adjustment, how that is done when you look at the body as a wholeness and geometry expressed through living systems. So let's get there to what Sue found out, which was not a mental thing that was put on the body. It was through exploration.
We're talking about the geometry now?
Yes, okay. We're getting there.
Yeah.
Because what is BGI? As I said in the beginning, it's short for biogeometric integration. How geometry is expressed in the body, or if we're going really, which we might touch on, how actually our physiology and anatomy becomes expressed through there being an intrinsic geometry that life organizes itself by. Different ways to explore. But let's get back to Sue and her exploration and where
sometimes we are. So I like to remember the Sue person that he's talking about is Sue Brown. She passed away in 2015, an incredible chiropractor, just a brilliant mind, and she, I feel like, was one of the rebels and revolutionaries in the field of chiropractic, because so much of what was just taken as this is how it is, she said, well, what if it isn't that way? And why don't we turn it on its head and see what that would look like? And where, and still in many chiropractic offices, the subluxation is, I think, and my experience is, it's kind of used as a motivator, but through a fear-based model. Like, if you have subluxations, you are going to die. And my role as the chiropractor is to remove the subluxations so that you don't die. And one of the things that I used to raise my hand about a lot in school is like, so are there any of these people who have had lots and lots of subluxations removed that are like 250 years old that we can go talk to? And the answer is no, there are not, that we all die.
Not that we're aware of.
They're all hiding in a cave somewhere. They're going to be pulled out in the next millennium. So it was like that, just the fear-based model of do this or else was not attractive to me. And what Sue brought to the profession was that if we believe in universal intelligence, which is this organizing force through all matter, and we believe in innate intelligence, which is that bit of universal intelligence expressing as me, as you, as all living things, there is a reason and an order and a logic to everything. And that the intelligences weren't on strike the day that the subluxation was made. You know, that there's a reason for the subluxation. And the reason I was taught historically is that it is a limitation of matter. That the body simply can't, and so it doesn't, and so there is this kind of breach in the system, and the breach is the subluxation. And when it was taught to me, it was like, why is it that we are basing our profession on a failure of limitation? Or failure or limitation. It doesn't make any sense if we have this incredible potential. So it was like this huge disconnect for me. And then I heard Sue speak, and what she said was that the subluxation is not a failure. The subluxation is a brilliant tool that is implemented by innate, by the brilliance in our own system, that when an experience that we have, that we are exposed to, whether it's a chemical toxin, a traumatic experience, an emotional experience, a trauma of any kind, some of those experiences we're going to be able to experience and whiz right through, and our system goes, okay, got it. Stay away from that plant in the future. Bad reaction, don't do it. Then there's others that are just so much that the system is like on overload, and it says, I cannot deal with this right now. But obviously, because we're always where we're supposed to be at the time we're supposed to be there to learn the lesson we're supposed to learn, I will take that information, I will hold on to that experience, and I will store it so that it is in me, and at some time in my future, I will be able to access that information and learn and grow from it.
Exactly.
And so the chiropractic adjustment is taking that stored information and saying, okay, you're in a state of ease right now. Here's that stuff that you've been holding on to. Let's integrate that so that instead of being stored in your tissues as a distortion that goes from everywhere, it goes through the skeletal system, it goes through the fascia, through the connective tissue, through all the organs, because everything is pulling everywhere. It is also stored in our emotional system, it's also stored in our energetic system. And let's release that information back into the system where it can then be integrated and it can become part of the music that our cells are playing, and part of the richness of our experience and knowledge and understanding and evolution, instead of this distortion that is creating a disharmony in the structure of our body.
Yeah.
So instead of being like a punishment where you failed, you didn't get it, we're gonna fix that.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, of course we can't integrate all of the experiences that we have as we're going. Imagine being in a car accident where you flip your car 14 times. That's a tremendous amount of energy and potential and information and experience and trauma and adrenaline and. So there, of course, there are going to be hundreds of layers of information in that experience. And of course we store it. And that is a beautiful adaptation and mechanism of innate intelligence. It's not a failure of.
No.
The system never fails.
Yeah.
The system adapts. And so the subluxation is this beautiful adaptation to the life experiences that we have that we're not able to integrate when we have them. And then it is stored so that we can then have access at a later date and time to be able to learn from that experience. I mean, it's a beautiful mechanism. And when Sue said that, I was like, so what we're selling, what we're offering to people is the possibility of integrating information that is being stored in our system that is not at ease and shifting that to a place where we have full access to the content of that material so that we can learn and evolve and grow. So that the subluxation becomes, the release of the subluxation becomes part of our evolution, part of our learning experience. And when I heard her say that, it was like, okay, that is exciting to me. And so it completely shifted my focus from being really good at elbows or headaches or whatever to being really good at connecting with people and being really good at listening to bodies and hearing what they have to say and just checking in and what are you ready to let go of today? How can I serve you? And it absolutely changes how I show up in the world and create a space for what people are ready to let go of.
Beautiful, beautiful. And there's obviously there's a way to this.
Yes.
We're getting there.
Yes. Okay.
So because Sue, she used, I mean, there's a lot of analysis that chiropractors have come up through to read the body and to read how it holds stored potential and energy. There's many ways to do it, but she started to map this out where she found the places to hold and connect, and it showed up in a very interesting way.
Yes. So, and basically what I think is so important is I think some people who know the work or have heard about it think that it was somehow channeled, or Sue was like this super spiritual being who wanted to blend spirituality with chiropractic. And that's, I mean, we're all super spiritual people, right? But she no more than others, or maybe she less than others, in that she was not attracted to, she wasn't looking for a spiritual context for chiropractic, because chiropractic in and of itself already has that bit to it. And so what she was more than anything else was just a dedicated and methodical and meticulous clinician. So as she was going through finding these patterns of the way information was being stored in the system, she started marking it down and mapping it out, and she had a couple people that were helping her just really map out what she was finding. And I think no one was more surprised than she when that map really showed up to be a series of triangles, and a consistent series of triangles on everybody in terms of a posterior model, an anterior model.
The front of the back of the body.
Yes, the back, the front, and then a volumetric geometry that brings the back and the front together.
Yeah.
And then a spatial movement-oriented geometry that brings into account the movement of the way those volumes sit and lie and move in space. And so there are 4 planes of this geometry. The way the geometry shows up is consistent. And she was, I think, quite surprised and potentially slightly uncomfortable when when it was brought to her attention that the model that she had drawn up was analogous to the Kabbalah.
Yeah, the tree of life.
The tree of life. And she just said, no, I'm a chiropractor. I'm not. Yeah. And I believe it was her partner who said, but you always said the true purpose of chiropractic, or the sole purpose of chiropractic, is to reconnect man physical with man spiritual. And the concept of the Kabbalah, or Jacob's ladder, is man's journey from physical to spirit to physical to spirit. We're on this journey of constant reckoning, whether it's in this incarnation or more incarnations, or all today only, of being stuck in this human suit and being very aware of our physicality, to being open and being aware of our interconnectedness, and then in some ways being squinched back down into our humanness, our physicality, and then having just those moments of expansion and connection and awareness. And sometimes you get one of those in a lifetime, and sometimes you get one of those in an hour, and sometimes you get one of those every minute, and it just depends on who you are and how you apply your time here this round. And so the geometry creates this logic and structure and beauty, and sometimes at the beginning it feels kind of like, well, that's like, I call it my treasure map, because if I know the geometry, I know how information is laid out in the system, and so then it's really easy to understand where things are going to go and how they're going to be laid down in the body. And then as our skills as the practitioner become more refined and more expanded, our understanding of the geometry also becomes more refined and expanded. And so you can imagine how you have access to that whole geometry through one access point. And it makes so much sense when we look at things through a tonal perspective of understanding the frequencies and the tones and the resonances that we can feel and perceive. And the difference between this point to this point, it can be so different. And so we have these fractal manifestations, but it's all back to the original geometry, which is so cool, because once you learn the basics, it's like then you can really kind of dive in deeper, and that's what we've been doing this weekend, and that's why you've had so much fun. Because you love getting more and more and more.
Exactly, it's a lovely thing. So what Sue found and mapped out was through her exploration. I mean, that was by touching and feeling the body.
So it wasn't like she said, wouldn't it be cool if we could find a geometric patterning that we could then place on the body that kind of looks like the Sri Yantra? Wouldn't that be awesome? Absolutely the contrary. And it was there. And so what I love about that is it truly was shown from the inside out. And that is chiropractic, above, down, inside out. We are allowing the system to express from inside out, and the geometry came from inside out. It was not imposed on the system. It was shown from the system.
And for those that are listening and seeing this, you might think you haven't heard about these words, Sri Yantra and Tree of Life and the Kabbalah, Jacob's ladder. That's in different cultures. Sri Yantra is from the Hinduic, Tibetan, how forms are expressed, and Kabbalah is obviously from the Jewish tradition. But you can even put that on the side, because the geometry of life, mathematically, that's where we are today. We can look at religious traditions, patterns that they have used through human history, things that's been burnt into stone in the pyramids in Egypt, the flower of life things. that are there. You can think about them. Okay, what is this shapes and forms that are triangular, tetrahedral, and so forth? Where did they come from? But the mathematics of today, exploring how reality expresses itself, not only in the body but everywhere, it's printed out as mathematical. You can just go to Vanderbilt, the fractal exploration of mathematics, and it's there. So it's not only the philosophical, religious way of painting and drawing things, it's how mathematics expresses itself.
Yep, patterns in nature.
Yeah, pattern in nature. It's mathematics in 3D of how we are. So bringing it back to that and bringing it back to fascia. Fascia is organizing itself in tetrahedral shapes and well,
and so do
in
cells.
in all sorts of forms, and even DNA expresses itself in tetrahedral forms. So these shapes, that goes back to the Platonic 5 shapes. It's always been there, and it's what we find whether we go with a very Western scientific way of looking at nature and trying to understand it, or whether we go from a more experiential part. It's either way we get to these shapes and forms, and it becomes a map for our awareness to explore ourselves and to explore someone else and facilitate someone else to unravel what more possible for them. So why, coming more to a closure, why should someone choose chiropractic and specifically BGI? Hopefully that's come through this soon an hour, I reckon. But what would you say to someone that's sort of like the short version of the potential offer of BGI?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it really comes to potential. It comes down to, I see you as an expression of infinite possibility, and your possibility is already there. And my goal as your chiropractor is to help your system unwind or unravel and release all of the accumulation that you have gone through life that has not been able to integrate, and just to allow that to slowly and with ease drop down. And what's left is that just beautiful, perfect you. And you are already beautiful and perfect.
Yes.
And sometimes that's hard when you're not feeling well. Is okay, great, those are just words. You know? So it's nice to have somebody on your team that sees your beauty and perfection, even in the midst of that. I don't feel good. So I mean, it's really hard for me to boil down, because it's, to me, BGI and chiropractic, they're so rich and for so many different reasons, and just finding somebody who speaks a language that makes sense to you, whether it's through their hands or through their mouth, or through their eyes, you know, it's a connection. And what's interesting, you know, for me, and this is why we all have come back here, there's just a really deep connection with the people who are practicing in this model. And there's so much gentleness, and there's so much love, and there is so little ego. It's just like, oh, you're amazing, and you're amazing, and you're amazing, without the you know, Dr. So-and-so, you're amazing. It's, no, Martin, you are amazing, and you bring something so special to this world, and I love being a part of it. And I mean, this is just one of the manifestations of that. So thank you for having me here.
Thank you for being here, and I'm so looking forward to the last day of our Corona Tetrahedral seminar, and I'm looking forward to getting adjusted again by you, which is one of the most lovely experiences I've had when it comes to chiropractic adjustments, so it's wonderful. So anyone that wants to learn more about BGI, might be chiropractors listening to this, As it is now, chiropractors are the only ones that are allowed to be taking seminars in BGI.
Correct.
But you can be interested in this work.
Yes.
You might be interested in getting to learn more. You might be interested in other support in this work, or become a practice member. So how do you find out more about BGI in
our
Europe?
website is www.bgieuropeseminars.com.
Yeah.
And on there, I believe we have an area that is right at one of the top corners where you can click on it in the hamburger, and one of the options is what is BGI, and it's a very simple PDF that you, if you're listening and you already know about BGI and you want access to it, it was created by Sue, and we've just made it into a digitally shared format. On that, we also have a media library that has different podcasts that I've had the honor of doing, and some YouTube links for stuff with Sue, and just various media material that kind of delves into BGI land, which is super rich and dense and exciting. And we're available. Like I'm very committed to connecting people. So if you're looking for a chiropractor and you can't find anybody, just go to our website. There's a what's up button. We'll find you somebody if we can. It's not a bother. I'm happy to do it, and I just love helping people meet their chiropractic person.
Thank you for that. And you and Valerie in UK, you are the stewards for BGI in Europe for promoting it and teaching it to other chiropractic students to spread the word out there and bring this wonderful work out there. So I'm very grateful for being part of it.
And we have Tara Dennis has been really instrumental in helping us build the field in Europe as well. So let's say Val and I are the old guard, and we've got some new, young, fresh blood coming in, and it's really exciting to see where things are going and how things are going, and it's just constantly, and that's another thing I love, it's constantly evolving and changing and growing, which makes so much sense.
And it's more and more chiropractors all over Europe that is integrating this in their work, so it's great. So thank you so much for your time, and you as a listener and viewer, so much thank you for taking the time to view this, and please, if you like it, share to those that you think around you that are interested in this.
You probably want your chiropractor to listen to this.
Exactly. Push the like button and be well and have an edge. Thank you for now.